Good morning.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me okay?
Sir?
Very good. I'm putting my phone on Do Not Disturb and turning on the timer so I make sure I don't abuse your time.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I don't know. You've got a couple of connections to Loaves and Fishes. You certainly know about India Williams.
Of course. Yeah.
She's
Yes.
she's been one of our moms with her kids in the program, and now she's one of the officers on our board of directors. But do you remember Celia Selden from
Oh my goodness. Good.
yeah. Cindy is
Goodness.
one of our volunteers, and she's been on our board as well. She's a good friend of mine.
Wow. Um, I don't even know what to say about that lady. Um, I don't know if she knows what she means to me. Um, first of all, as humans, the one thing I think we always remember is our favorite teacher of all time.
Mm-hmm.
She was my favorite teacher of all time.
Really?
Oh my goodness. Like she came into my life at a time where, you know, the world was spinning for me. I was a 12-year-old confused kid who was suffering from some losses and challenges around him that really didn't know how to deal with those things. And for some reason, she just took a liking to me. And she was one of the first teachers that I fully trusted. And it was unique because it was the mid to late 80s and she didn't look like me, right? So I had never
Right.
had to trust or had, major interactions with people that didn't look like me. And,
Right.
years later, um, she was the person that really offered me my first coaching job at West Millbrook Middle School.
I didn't realize that she was the one that took you there. Okay.
Yeah, and the rest is history. The rest is history, as they say. So yeah, I absolutely love and adore that woman.
We appreciate you joining us.
No
I'm
problem.
hopeful that at some point you can join us in person, but this is the world we're living in right now.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I've got some questions I thought maybe I'd offer to you, and your responses I think will be very similar to some of the things that we try to do at Loaves and Fishes. You were never part of Loaves and Fishes program, but you were part of the Boys Club, and you grew up in neighborhoods like many of our kids do, and probably have some of the same experiences they do.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, well, one of the things that we try to do at Loaves and Fishes is make sure that our kids have connected somehow with an adult, someone
Hmm.
that they know is going to love them no matter how bad their day was, is going to show them how special they are and try to encourage them and that kind of thing. You've had that experience in your life. Tell me a little about that and how important you think that is for kids.
I think it's super important. I think it's essential to the growth and evolution and the development of young men and young women. Um, I struggled initially because my Superman was my father, and I thought I had that in him, but he left when I was 4 years old. So I really struggled with that void. I didn't know what was worse in my life, for me to know him for 4 years and then he walk out the door, or for me just not to know him at all. I thought I would prefer the latter based off our relationship and you showing up and just walking out the door. So I really struggled emotionally because I felt as if the guy that created me didn't love me enough to stay, then why would anyone else? So I sought that compromise and I sought father figures, in my neighborhood. And unfortunately, um, some people didn't approve of the father figures that I sought out, but I was just looking for any kind of male guidance. My mother was incredible, and she raised two boys in the housing projects in the middle of the 80s with the crack epidemic. And so she was absolutely incredible and phenomenal, but she couldn't teach me how to be a man. So I was looking for someone who could teach me the principles of manhood so I could navigate my way through life. And I actually found that in several human beings, one being Ron Williams at the Boys and Girls Club. He took a liking to me early, and this was a guy who showed me how to shoot a basketball, how to hit a baseball, how to throw a football. He gave me the conversations about the birds and the bees. All of those things rolled up into one, and he exhibited tough love. Like it was a no nonsense approach. He was a truth teller, and he shot straight from the hip. But what it did, it taught me later on in life, and he never gave anyone credit. Like, I don't care what you did. He just said, well, that was okay. In baseball, if I hit 3 home runs, well, okay, whatever. One night in basketball, I scored like 46 points. I was 9 years old. He was like, he ain't playing against nobody. So I never received his validation. So it gave me a driving urge to receive his validation. And I remember the exact night. The night was June 19th, 1986. I'm a stickler for dates when they come to impactful situations in my life. And we were riding home from a basketball game, and he was my coach, and we won the championship, and I scored 51 points, and I got MVP of the thing. And in my mind, I'm like, he has to tell me that I'm good now, because that's all I ever really wanted. And he pulled up to my house, and before I got out the car, he said, "I've seen plenty of kids come through this boys club, but you're the best basketball player I've ever seen in my life." And from there, my confidence skyrocketed. I thought I could do anything in life, because my main and primary validation was to receive his. And it gave me an incredible amount of confidence when I absolutely needed it the most.
Right. That's awesome. I know that your grandmother also played a very significant role for you, and one of the principles that I've heard is that it doesn't matter to some extent what other people think.
Yeah.
That you do your own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How important was she, and what do you think the couple of main principles that you got from her guidance?
Oof. She passed in 86, 85, 86, but I'm still learning now. I say to this day, she didn't have a formal education, but she was the smartest human being I've ever met in my life. And, I'm sorry about my phone. I'm sorry. She was the smartest human being I've ever met in my life. One day I went to elementary school, and the teacher did the game where she lined up everyone and said, "What you want to be when you grow older," and so on and so forth. And my thing was J.J. Evans. I wanted to be an actor. I loved the show Good Times. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to be J.J. Evans. And the entire classroom just bust out laughing when I said that. So I ran home. I was going to be like the first toddler dropout in American school history. I won't going back. And she asked me what was wrong, and I told her, I said, I wanted to be J.J. Evans, and the entire classroom laughed at me. So a couple of months later, she called me, and she stayed around the corner from me, and she went to church around the corner. It was in walking distance. And she said, "Puffy, I need you to," that was my nickname. She said, "Puffy, I need you to bring a towel and a robe and meet me at the church in 10 minutes. So whenever she said something, her word was gospel to me. I never questioned. I had a towel and a robe, and I went to church. And when I get there, she's putting the robe on me, and she's putting the towel over my head. And I said, "Grandma, like, what we doing?" And she said, "You're going to be acting in this play." I was like, "What's the play?" And she was like, "It's a Christmas play, and you're going to be Joseph." I said, "Who is Joseph?" And she was telling me it was Jesus' stepfather, pretty much. Yeah. I was like, wow, as bad as I am, my acting role is going to be, Jesus' stepfather. So I went out there, I did my role, and I had my parts. And afterwards, the preacher gave us like a couple of gifts. But the moral of that and the takeaway of that was, I thought even to this day, she remembered that I wanted to be an actor and people laughed at me. So I actually served as my manager and gave me my first acting role in the church. And that was her way of saying, I believe in you. And whatever you believe in your heart and your dream, that's between you and God. That's not between anyone else. What other people think about you is pretty much none of your business. So I carried that with me, to this day, because I'm in a very highly publicized position where I receive a lot of the opinions of people who feel as if they know basketball better than me. And that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. But it comes with the territory, and it's the nature of the beast. And she taught me that from day one.
I think one of the things that at Loaves and Fishes we try to do is build the self-confidence of our kids. They frequently, when they start working with us, they're pretty low in self-esteem, and it's hard to get anything done if you don't feel good about yourself. So we try to find what we refer to as their spark, something that excites them. It doesn't have to be anything about school, but something that makes them excited to get up in the morning. And if we can find a volunteer that has that same spark, we'll try to connect them and build on that so that they feel good about themselves. And if you, as you're saying, if you're feeling good about something, then you can build on that and feel good about other things as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
That's very cool. Well, we also try to make sure that Loaves and Fishes is a safe place for our kids, because sometimes where they're living and the environment that they find themselves in with other kids isn't always a friendly place. And so when they arrive in the afternoon when we have program, we try to make sure that they get a hug or a high five, or we make sure they understand that it doesn't matter what happened the rest of your day, you're cool here.
Right.
Glad to see you.
All right.
And the boys club seemed to be that for you. Is that right?
Yeah, that was a super special place, and it's probably responsible for greatly responsible for me becoming the man that I've become today, in large part because, when I was growing up, it was a difficult time period. It was the inception of crack cocaine. So I'm literally seeing crack cocaine destroy our neighborhoods. It's destroying our parents. It's destroying our grandparents. People are now being killed over territorial rights in our community, and it was just a downfall. It was an outbreak, man. And people that you saw that was perfectly fine now become, it was almost like they were looking like zombies walking up the street because they were strung out on this drug. And all of it was just a big carnage that was associated with it. And now kids my age are being recruited to sell the drug. And their back is against the wall because they see their family struggling. And they're living in low socioeconomic backgrounds, and they're going through poverty, so they have a decision to make. What I found out is that many of the crimes that occurred in amongst teens occurred during the hours of 3 to 6. Like, mind you, we were latchkey kids, so our parents weren't home. We would get home before our parents and, have a lot of free time, actually before the parents got home. And my grandmother always told me a quote. I think she said, an idle mind is a devil's playground, right? So if you got too much time on your hand, you're bound to get into something, especially as a teen. So my mom immediately signed my brother and I up for the boys club. And the mantra at the time was, it was the club that beats the streets. And it was my first time, being in a diversified, environment of people with from all backgrounds. And they respected who I was, and I respected who they were. And now I'm competing against them. I'm competing with them. I'm going through outward bound programs. I'm having cooking classes. I'm learning so many different, skill sets that can apply to my life. But the most important thing I'm learning is to manage my time constructively. I'm no longer in the streets, and I'm no longer, being in possible harm's way of shootings and stabbings, because there were innocent bystanders getting killed during this time. And, I have plenty of friends that just didn't make it, to see their 18th birthday. And so I was really fortunate. And you couple that with the relationship with Ron Williams, the Boys Club really is responsible for saving my life. It showed me that there's a world bigger than, Lane Street. Because all I was used to come home to was a 4-block radius, with big gates up. And subconsciously and psychologically, it did something to you, because it almost said, like, these gates are up here to keep us within this box and limit us from this outside world. So the Boys Club allowed me many firsts. They took me to my first professional baseball game, the Atlanta Braves. My first college basketball game, NC State. They just broadened my horizons and allowed me to see visuals where I could associate my dreams and attach my dreams to the visuals and somehow make it into fruition.
That's awesome. Well, you know, as Ron became a mentor to you, we frequently find that our volunteers or our staff people have that type of a connection with some of our kids and end up building lifelong relationships. We've been around 38 years. There are relationships that still exist from those early years.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say to maybe one of our current volunteers that's considering that, how important that ends up being for you as a coach with some of the young people that you work with, but also for you when you were on the other end of that?
Yeah, I think it's really critical to understand that teachers, coaches, volunteers, it's all a thankless job, right? You don't receive instant gratification. So don't do it because you're expecting a round of applause immediately, because it's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times those kids, I'm 45 years old now, and I'm just now, maybe 5-6 years ago, I've just become, highly efficient in being able to communicate the impact that Ron Williams and some of my mentors had on me, so it takes a while. It takes a while for it to completely dawn in. And that's the beauty of life. It's best understood backwards, but you have to live it forward. So I would say, to all of the volunteers, continue to pour that love in from a pure place. Continue to be completely honest. Continue to prepare these young men and women for this harsh reality called this real world that we live in. Don't coddle them, right? Because that's not how it's going to be. Coddle them when it's needed, but be honest and show tough love when it's needed as well, because they have to be able to adapt when the rubber meets the road and they go out here in this real world, because this is a harsh place, man. And it's a harsh reality. It's a good life, but it's also a life that you must ultimately be prepared for. So continue to pour love and appreciation and respect into those kids. And any seed that you plant, it will grow as long as you water it and cultivate it.
Right.
So that kind of has to be the philosophy of mentors and coaches and teachers. Continue to pour water on it and continue to cultivate that seed, and it'll grow into something that we all can be proud of.
Terrific. Coach, I've only got one more question for you. Assuming that the world gets back to something normal after this pandemic, how are the Eagles going to do this year?
I hope we'll we'll be fine. We've won 4 championships, so I had an incredible staff and some incredible basketball players, and we're excited about the new kids that we have, new young men that we have coming in, and we're looking forward to doing it all over again. We have a motto that says the standard is the standard here. So the bar is really set high. It's been established high, and so we're looking forward to it.
Terrific. Well, we appreciate the example that you've been and your words of wisdom, the leadership that you've provided to hundreds of young people in our community. And thank you very much for participating in our event this time.
Thank you.
We hope when we get back to normal, we could have you in person and enjoy meeting you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. God bless you all.
Thank you.